Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the life you dream about is waiting for you, but it only shows up before the world wakes up? While most people are still asleep, comforted by excuses, there is a quiet window of opportunity at 4 a.m. A time when distractions are silent, when doubts are weaker, and when your true self has a chance to speak. This is not just about waking up early, it's about waking up to your purpose. Early mornings hold a kind of power that most people overlook, yet it is in these quiet hours that true opportunity begins to take shape. When you wake up at 4 a.m., you step into a space that feels almost untouched by the outside world. The noise hasn't started yet, the demands of the day haven't begun, and for a brief moment, life feels slower, clearer, and more intentional. This is where opportunity lives, not in chaos, but in calmness. Most people wait for the perfect moment to start working on their goals, but that moment rarely comes during a busy day filled with distractions. Messages, responsibilities, social media, and endless interruptions constantly pull attention away from what truly matters. But at 4 a.m., those distractions simply don't exist. It becomes easier to focus, to think deeply, and to work with purpose. This uninterrupted time allows you to give your full energy to what you care about, whether it's learning something new, planning your future, or improving your mindset. There is also something powerful about the psychological shift that happens when you wake up earlier than everyone else. It creates a sense of control and ownership over your time. Instead of reacting to the day, you are preparing for it. Instead of rushing through tasks, you are intentionally choosing how to spend your energy. This shift may seem small at first, but over time, it builds confidence and self-discipline, two qualities that are essential for long-term success. Waking up early also strengthens your relationship with yourself. In the silence of the morning, you are not influenced by other people's opinions, expectations, or pressures. You have the space to reflect, to understand your thoughts, and to reconnect with your purpose. This clarity is often lost during the rest of the day when everything moves quickly and demands immediate attention. The early morning gives you a rare chance to slow down and listen to your inner voice, which is often the most honest guide you have. Another important aspect of early mornings is consistency. When you wake up at the same time every day, especially at a challenging hour like 4 a.m., you are training your mind to follow through on commitments. You are proving to yourself that you can do difficult things even when you don't feel like it. This builds trust within yourself, and that trust becomes the foundation for achieving bigger goals. It's not just about waking up early once, it's about showing up every single day, regardless of how you feel. Over time, these early hours begin to compound. One productive morning may not seem like much, but when repeated over weeks and months, it creates a significant advantage. You gain extra time to learn, to grow, and to move closer to your goals while others are still asleep. This doesn't mean you are competing with others, but it does mean you are giving yourself a head start. And in life, small, consistent advantages often lead to extraordinary results. Early mornings are not about sacrificing sleep for the sake of being productive, but about creating a dedicated space where growth becomes a priority. It's about choosing intention over distraction, focus over noise, and purpose over comfort. When you begin your day in this way, everything else starts to align differently. Your mindset becomes stronger, your actions become more deliberate, and your progress becomes more visible over time. Discipline over comfort is one of the most defining choices a person can make, yet it is also one of the hardest to practice consistently. Every day, you are faced with small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, but shape your future over time. The choice between staying comfortable and doing what is necessary often appears in simple forms, whether it's getting out of bed early, pushing through a difficult task, or staying committed when motivation fades. Comfort is always inviting because it feels easy and familiar, but discipline is what creates growth because it challenges you to act beyond your feelings. Comfort zones are designed to keep you safe, not successful. When you stay within what feels easy, you avoid discomfort, but you also avoid progress. Growth requires effort, and effort often comes with resistance. Your mind will naturally try to protect you from difficulty by offering excuses, convincing you to delay action, or making you believe that you can start tomorrow. But discipline is the ability to recognize those thoughts and act anyway. It is not about feeling ready. It is about deciding that your goals matter more than your temporary emotions. One of the biggest misconceptions about discipline is that it requires constant motivation. In reality, discipline exists because motivation is unreliable. There will be days when you feel inspired and ready to take on challenges, but there will be many more days when you don't. If you rely only on motivation, your progress will be inconsistent. Discipline, on the other hand, creates stability. It allows you to take action even when you feel tired, distracted, or uncertain. It becomes a system that keeps you moving forward regardless of how you feel in the moment. Choosing discipline over comfort also strengthens your mental resilience. Every time you do something difficult instead of something easy, you are training your mind to handle discomfort. At first, it feels challenging, even overwhelming, but over time, what once felt hard begins to feel normal. You build a tolerance for effort, and your confidence grows because you start to see that you are capable of more than you thought. This resilience becomes a powerful asset, especially when facing bigger challenges in life. There is also a deeper sense of self-respect that comes from living with discipline. When you consistently follow through on your commitments, you begin to trust yourself. You no longer see yourself as someone who gives up easily or makes excuses. Instead, you become someone who shows up, who keeps going, and who honors their word. This self-trust is essential because it influences every area of your life, from your work to your relationships to your personal growth. Comfort, while appealing, often leads to regret when chosen too often. It gives short-term satisfaction, but rarely leads to long-term fulfillment. Discipline, on the other hand, may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it creates a sense of pride and accomplishment that lasts much longer. It shifts your focus from immediate pleasure to meaningful progress. You begin to understand that true satisfaction comes not from avoiding effort, but from embracing it and seeing the results it brings. Over time, the gap between those who choose comfort and those who choose discipline becomes more visible. It's not because one group is more talented or more fortunate, but because their daily choices are different. Discipline compounds just like any other habit. Each small act of effort builds upon the last, creating momentum that eventually leads to significant change. What once felt like a struggle becomes part of your identity, something you do naturally rather than something you force yourself to do. Choosing discipline over comfort is ultimately about taking responsibility for your life. It means accepting that your future is shaped by what you do today, not by what you plan to do someday. It requires honesty with yourself and the willingness to act, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. And while the journey may not always be easy, it is always worth it because it leads you closer to the person you are capable of becoming. Control over your habits is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your life, yet it often goes unnoticed because habits operate quietly in the background of your daily routine. Most people don't realize how much of their life is shaped by repeated actions rather than conscious decisions. From the moment you wake up to the way you respond to challenges, your habits are constantly influencing your behavior. If those habits are unintentional, they can lead you in a direction you never truly chose. But when you take control of them, you begin to take control of your life itself. Every habit starts as a choice, but over time, it becomes automatic. This is where the danger lies, because once something becomes automatic, you stop questioning it. You follow the same patterns without thinking, even if they are no longer serving you. Waking up late, procrastinating important tasks, or seeking comfort instead of growth can all become default behaviors if left unchecked. Taking control means breaking this cycle of unconscious repetition and bringing awareness back into your actions. It requires you to pause and ask yourself whether your current habits are helping you move forward or holding you back. One of the most important aspects of controlling your habits is understanding that change does not happen overnight. It is not about making one big decision and expecting everything to transform instantly. Instead, it is about making small, consistent changes that gradually reshape your routine. When you decide to wake up early, for example, you are not just changing your alarm time, you are redefining your relationship with discipline, time, and priorities. Each time you follow through, you reinforce a new identity, one that is aligned with growth rather than comfort. Control also means taking responsibility for your environment. Your surroundings play a significant role in shaping your habits, often more than your willpower alone. If your environment is filled with distractions, it becomes much harder to stay focused. If it encourages comfort, it becomes easier to avoid effort. By intentionally designing your environment to support your goals, you reduce the friction between intention and action. This might mean limiting distractions, setting clear routines, or creating spaces that encourage productivity and reflection. When your environment supports your habits, consistency becomes easier to maintain. Another key element is self-awareness. You cannot control what you do not understand. Paying attention to your triggers, your patterns, and your reactions allows you to identify the moments when you are most likely to fall back into old habits. Once you recognize these patterns, you can begin to interrupt them and replace them with better choices. This process requires patience and honesty because it forces you to confront behaviors that may be uncomfortable to acknowledge. But it is through this awareness that real change begins. As you gain more control over your habits, you also gain a greater sense of freedom. This may seem counterintuitive at first because discipline is often associated with restriction. However, true freedom comes from knowing that you are not controlled by impulses or external influences. It comes from having the ability to choose your actions deliberately rather than reacting automatically. When your habits are aligned with your goals, your daily actions start to move you in the direction you want to go, without constant struggle or resistance. Over time, this control builds confidence and self-trust. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who is capable of change, and someone who is in charge of their own path. This belief becomes a powerful force because it shapes how you approach challenges and opportunities. Instead of feeling stuck or limited by your past behaviors, you start to see possibilities for growth and improvement in every situation. Controlling your habits is not about perfection, but about progress. There will be moments when you slip, when old patterns resurface, or when motivation fades. What matters is not avoiding these moments entirely, but learning how to respond to them. Each time you choose to get back on track, you strengthen your ability to stay consistent in the long run. And with each small step forward, you move closer to becoming the person you are capable of being. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful environments for building clarity. In a world filled with constant noise, distractions, and endless input from others, the mind rarely gets a chance to settle. Thoughts overlap, attention is pulled in multiple directions, and decisions become rushed or influenced by external pressures. When you step into silence, especially during early hours like 4 a.m., you create a space where your mind can finally slow down and organize itself. This is where clarity begins to form, not through force, but through stillness. Most people go through their day reacting rather than reflecting. They respond to messages, handle responsibilities, and deal with situations as they come, often without taking the time to understand why they are doing what they are doing. This constant reaction mode leaves little room for intentional thinking. Silence interrupts that cycle. It allows you to step back from the noise and observe your thoughts without urgency. In that space, you begin to notice patterns, priorities, and even hidden concerns that are usually buried under daily distractions. Clarity comes from being able to hear your own thoughts without interference. When you are surrounded by noise, whether it is social media, conversations, or external opinions, it becomes difficult to distinguish what you truly want from what others expect of you. Silence removes those external voices, giving your inner voice a chance to surface. This voice is often more honest and aligned with your values, but it requires stillness to be heard. When you spend time in silence, you start to understand your goals more clearly, not as vague ideas, but as specific intentions. Another important aspect of silence is its ability to improve decision-making. When your mind is cluttered, decisions tend to be impulsive or driven by emotion. You may choose what feels easiest in the moment rather than what is right in the long term. In silence, your thoughts become more structured and you can evaluate situations with greater awareness. You begin to weigh your options more carefully, consider consequences, and align your choices with your long-term vision. This leads to decisions that are not only smarter, but also more consistent with who you want to become. Silence also strengthens your focus. When there are no distractions competing for your attention, your mind can fully engage with one task at a time. This deep focus allows you to work more efficiently and with greater quality. Instead of switching between tasks or losing concentration, you become immersed in what you are doing. Over time, this ability to focus deeply becomes a valuable skill, especially in a world where attention is constantly being divided. There is also a calming effect that silence brings, which directly impacts your mental clarity. When the mind is overwhelmed, it becomes harder to think clearly or process information effectively. Silence acts as a reset, reducing mental clutter and allowing your thoughts to settle. This calm state not only improves clarity, but also enhances creativity. Ideas flow more naturally when the mind is not overloaded, and you may find solutions to problems that previously seemed complicated. Spending time in silence also builds a stronger connection with yourself. It creates an opportunity for self-reflection where you can evaluate your actions, understand your emotions, and realign with your purpose. Without this reflection, it is easy to drift through life without direction, following routines without questioning their impact. Silence brings awareness to these patterns, giving you the chance to make intentional changes. Over time, the habit of seeking silence becomes a source of strength. It becomes a place where you can return whenever you feel overwhelmed, confused, or distracted. Instead of looking for answers outside, you begin to trust your ability to find them within. This shift not only improves clarity, but also builds confidence in your own judgment. Silence is not about isolating yourself from the world, but about creating moments where you can truly understand it and your place within it. It is in these quiet moments that your thoughts align, your purpose becomes clearer, and your direction becomes stronger. Small choices often feel insignificant in the moment, but over time, they quietly shape the direction of your life. One of the most overlooked examples of this is something as simple as hitting the snooze button. It seems harmless, just a few extra minutes of rest, a small delay before starting the day. But what makes it powerful is not the action itself, but the pattern it creates when repeated consistently. Every time you choose to delay, you are reinforcing a mindset that prioritizes immediate comfort over long-term growth. The danger of small choices is that they rarely feel important enough to question. When you hit snooze, you don't feel like you're making a life-altering decision. It feels temporary, almost invisible. But habits are built on repetition, not intensity. What you do daily matters far more than what you do occasionally. When a small action like delaying your start becomes a routine, it begins to influence other areas of your life. You may start postponing tasks, avoiding challenges, or waiting for the right time instead of taking action immediately. There is also a psychological message behind every small choice. When you hit snooze, you are telling yourself that your commitments can wait. You are signaling that your goals are not urgent enough to act on right now. Over time, this message becomes part of your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who delays, someone who starts late, someone who struggles with consistency. This may not happen consciously, but it shapes your behavior in subtle ways that affect your overall progress. On the other hand, choosing to get up immediately, even when it's difficult, sends a completely different message. It tells your mind that you are someone who takes action, someone who honors commitments, and someone who values discipline. This shift in identity is powerful because it influences future decisions. When you start seeing yourself as a person who follows through, it becomes easier to make better choices throughout the day. Small choices also have a compounding effect. One delayed morning may not seem like a big deal, but when it happens repeatedly, it adds up. You lose valuable time that could have been used for growth, planning, or self-improvement. More importantly, you lose momentum. Starting your day late often leads to rushing, which can create stress and reduce the quality of your work. This pattern can continue throughout the day, affecting your productivity and mindset. Consistency in small actions is what creates lasting change. Big goals are achieved not through occasional bursts of effort, but through daily discipline. Each time you choose action over delay, you are building momentum. You are training your mind to respond differently, to prioritize what matters instead of what feels easy. Over time, these small wins create a sense of progress, which fuels motivation and strengthens your commitment. Another important aspect is awareness. Many people go through their routines without realizing the impact of their small decisions. They focus on bigger goals, but overlook the daily habits that either support or sabotage those goals. By becoming more aware of these choices, you gain the ability to change them. You start to see that every moment presents an opportunity to either move forward or stay where you are. It's also important to understand that small choices are not just about productivity, but about self-respect. When you consistently choose to delay, you are not just losing time, you are lowering your standards. You are accepting less from yourself than what you are capable of. But when you choose to act, even in small ways, you raise those standards. You begin to expect more from yourself, and that expectation drives better behavior. Over time, the difference between small choices becomes significant. The person who consistently delays may find themselves stuck, wondering why progress feels slow. Meanwhile, the person who takes action, even in small moments, builds a path toward growth and achievement. The gap between these two outcomes is not created by one big decision, but by countless small ones made every single day. Success is often seen as something that happens in public, the recognition, the achievements, the visible results that others admire. But what most people don't see is where that success is actually built. It is not created in moments of attention or applause, but in private, in the quiet and often uncomfortable moments when no one is watching. This is where real transformation begins, away from validation, away from praise, and completely dependent on your own commitment. When you are alone, there is no external pressure forcing you to act. There are no expectations to meet, no audience to impress, and no immediate consequences for choosing comfort over effort. This is what makes private moments so important, because they reveal your true character. What you do when no one is watching reflects who you really are, not who you pretend to be in front of others. It is easy to appear disciplined when people are observing you, but it is much harder to maintain that discipline when you are completely on your own. In these unseen moments, your habits are formed and strengthened. The early mornings, the extra hours of practice, the time spent learning, reflecting, and improving, these are the building blocks of success. They may not feel significant at the time, and they may not bring immediate rewards, but they create the foundation for everything that follows. Without this foundation, any success achieved in public is often temporary because it lacks the depth and consistency that come from real effort. There is also a sense of honesty that comes with working in private. When you are alone, you cannot rely on external motivation or validation to push you forward. Your actions must come from within, from your own sense of purpose and responsibility. This builds a deeper connection to your goals because you are not doing the work for recognition, but for growth. You begin to understand that the process itself is valuable, not just the outcome. Working in private also removes the pressure of comparison. In public, it is easy to measure yourself against others, to feel ahead or behind based on what you see. This can create unnecessary stress and distract you from your own path. But in private, the focus shifts inward. You are not competing with anyone else, but with your previous self. This allows for more genuine progress because your efforts are directed toward improvement rather than comparison. Another important aspect is resilience. When you consistently put in effort without immediate recognition, you develop patience and perseverance. You learn to trust the process, even when results are not visible right away. This mindset is essential because success rarely happens overnight. It requires time, consistency, and the ability to keep going, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Private work teaches you to stay committed during these periods, knowing that progress is still happening beneath the surface. There is also a level of confidence that comes from knowing the work you have put in. When success finally becomes visible, it does not feel accidental or undeserved. You understand exactly how you got there because you have seen the effort, the discipline, and the sacrifices that went into it. This confidence is different from external validation because it is built on real experience, not on the opinions of others. Over time, the results of private effort begin to show. What was once unseen becomes visible, and others may start to notice the progress you have made. But by that point, the recognition is no longer the goal. It becomes a byproduct of the work you have already done. The focus remains on continuous growth, because you have learned that true success is not a single moment, but an ongoing process. Success built in private is stronger, more sustainable, and more meaningful because it is rooted in discipline rather than attention. It is shaped by the choices you make when you have the option to do nothing, and strengthened by the effort you put in without expecting immediate reward.